last up late before the West Australian election.
It's Roger Cooks to lose. And the only way that'll happen is if every Labor candidate is suddenly outed as a secret Nazi pedophile who supports Collingwood.
Knob.
Labor's majority is so big it could lose a record number of seats and still have its second best ever election result. Even though Roger's the most disappointing sequel since Look Who's Talking 2, he'll still keep his job.
What's that?
What's up, my man?
So it's a sure thing.
Not completely sure. And that's not because of her or him. It's because of this guy.
You are fake news.
You think people will vote Liberal because of Trump?
I think the Libs have tapped into that wave of conservatism and it will yield votes. That's assuming voters here are smart enough to know that the red and blue team in America don't match the red and blue teams in Australia. Regardless of why you're voting a certain way, here's an up-late guide to why the 2025 election campaign was proof that politicians are full of shit. If you're voting for Labor because you agree with their gun crackdown, consider this. Police Minister Paul Papalia says fewer legal guns means fewer stolen guns that end up out on the street and in the hands of these guys.
Mathematically logical.
Except the overwhelming majority of stolen firearms are taken from farms because cockies tend to be quite relaxed about gun security. And farmers have been given so many exemptions under the new legislation that they are still tooled up like John Wick. So there are still big arsenals out in the bush.
Excellent.
Which is where thieves do most of their work. A lot of people are going to vote for Roger because he's going to end fossil fuels dominance by shutting down Collie's coal-fired power stations within 5 years. If you're that voter, be aware that despite what the Premier is saying, the shortfall is not going to be made up by this or this. The lights will be kept on by these. They're gas-fired power plants, and it means Labor's third term in government will still be brought to you by fossil fuel.
Well, he's giving people cheap household batteries.
Is he? If you've got rooftop solar and you're thinking about voting Labor because they're promising you a battery to store your own juice, be mindful of two things. First, it's only a trial and there's a set and quite small number of subsidies being dangled. Second, government subsidies push up prices. Just look what the Home Buyers Grant did.
Insufficient funds.
Ring any battery supplier right now and they'll tell you the volume of inquiries from this trial is twice what the trial allows for. So you have a 50% chance of actually getting a subsidy, and if you do, it will cover far less of the bill than you think. Health is where the Liberals have focused their attention.
And got most cut through.
If you are going to tick the box of the party that's promising the most beds, you are wasting your vote.
Since 2021, we've increased funding for health and mental health by more than $14 billion.
WA is less affordable. Our hospitals are in crisis.
We could have 1,000 more ED beds and they'll still instantly be filled because a doctor will always put a patient in a bed if it's empty.
Well, they want the best care for that person even if they aren't that sick.
Yeah, they're all very caring, like George Clooney.
Well, they are.
Sandy, you are doing great.
Also because they're covering their own asses. Think about this, you're a doctor on the midnight shift and there's someone in front of you that you're 99% sure has the flu and is going to get better with rest at home.
Ferris, you're sick. And don't go pushing it and making yourself worse.
Why would you discharge them and risk that mild flu actually being septicemia or something when you can put them in a bed and make sure they really are okay and protect your own ass?
Get well.
And guess what? The 4-hour rule means that in 240 minutes, it won't be your problem anymore because the patient will be moved to another area of the hospital, like the acute surgical unit or acute management unit.
Which means we're still going to have ambulance ramping.
If Libby does ever get in power, this ad will haunt her.
I've just logged into the St John ambulance ramping data for August and we're over 1,200 hours already.
She will be hung by her complaints about ramping just like Roger was when he was in opposition. But it's better to take the arrows in government than fling them from opposition.
Yep.
More subsidies, more land releases, blah, blah, blah.
Unlocking 100,000 new homes across Western Australia.
Don't vote Liberal because you think they're going to solve the housing crisis. We can't build houses because we can't get enough tradies, and we can't get enough tradies because we've got no houses.
Jetty.
And even if they do come here, they quickly realise there's better money on the mines up north than being a chippy in Perth.
Here's a way you can make brain surgeon money without having to be a brain surgeon.
A lot of people will be voting Labor because the party is financially responsible.
Yes, I'm certain that I read that somewhere once.
Read it, heard it, watched it. If Labor's such good money managers, why are we going to be in more debt than ever before once they finish the next term of government?
Yeah, something doesn't add up there.
Yeah, we've been clocking huge surpluses for what, 6-7 years now? They're an illusion. We have budget surpluses when it comes to running hospitals and schools and public transport and the other bits of government. We don't have surpluses once we factor in the cost of building the hospitals and government and public transport. The WA Treasury keeps two sets of books, recurrent spending and capital spending. Once both spending's accounted for, we are actually in deficit, which is why state debt is increasing under Rita Safiotti's watch. Rita bragging about surpluses is like you being happy about having cash left over after you've paid your weekly bills, but you've forgotten that you still have a mortgage.
You ain't got no money.
Well, no politician ever lost an election saying they'll be tough on crime.
Toughest bikie laws, toughest gun laws, toughest domestic violence laws. Next time a politician talks about being tough on crime, ask them this. What's the price tag? Libby says she'll put extra cops on the street. She's not, actually. It's the same number of cops, they're just doing more overtime, so they're going to be knackered when they respond to you. But it means more policing hours, which means more arrests, which means more trials, means more courthouses, more judges, more convictions, more prisons, more prison officers, more parole officers. We need to ask ourselves, do we really want to be tough on crime, or do we want hospitals and schools?
Oh my God, you make it sound like there's no point voting at all.
No, I'm just saying make sure you do it with your eyes open. Don't do it with a head full of their bullshit.
Knob.
I'm Ben Harvey.